Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We are continuing with our summer scouting series, heading on to the Ohio State Buckeyes. If you guys are new to the channel, summer scouting, the fellas go back to the 2022 games, take a look at the depth chart heading into 2023, and then take a look at the schedule and project this team heading into the 2023 season. And if you guys do enjoy getting a little action on it, we will give you guys a win total if we do like it. Now, again, before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. All the support you guys have shown to the channel truly does mean a lot. We love talking ball, whether it's the recruiting trail, whether it's the transfer portal, whether it's summer scouting, and we can't thank you guys enough. Over 5,000 subscribers on the channel. We can't thank you guys enough. So if you do enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel. Dill, I am going to kick it off to you here. Start us off with just a State of the Union for the Ohio State Buckeyes football program heading into 2023 here.
I mean, this feels like a big year in terms of thinking about the balance of power in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
As a Michigan fan, it doesn't feel like to me it's totally shifted yet. And no. The odds makers don't say that. They still project Ohio State to win the Big Ten.
Just mentally. I mean, like when you lose that many games in a row, like in 2 years, it doesn't go away, if I'm being honest with you.
You still feel like Ohio State's the big dog, but if you make it 3 in a row, though, then it changes. And I think Alabama and Georgia are very much in a similar position where Georgia's kind of wresting that control away from Alabama, who'd been running the show nationwide, I guess, for almost 10 years. And Ohio State and the Big Ten had been running the show. It was not close with anyone, frankly, for a long time. And now Michigan kind of moving on up. And this again, like Ohio State, I imagine those fans, like you want to put them back down and restore kind of the order, if you will, of what Ohio State believes they should be.
Yeah, and heading into 2023 season, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball here, loaded with talent, but a few question marks, and we'll get to them. The offensive tackle position, definitely a question mark. You obviously have a quarterback battle that's going on as well. Let's start with the quarterback. I mean, Kyle McCord, Devin Brown going at it. From what I'm reading with the spring practice notes, Kyle McCord has the upper hand. Obviously, Devin Brown goes down with the finger injury late in spring practice. Kyle McCord, quarterback 1, if that happens. It doesn't really matter in my mind because whoever is taking quarterback 1 snaps is going to be surrounded by, arguably, I don't even know if you can make a good argument against it, the most talented, skilled positions, whether it's wide receivers or running back, in the whole entire country.
No, I mean, you have the best wide receiver I think I've ever seen play the position in college football, at least in my
the hype he's getting for the 2024 NFL draft is ludicrous. Like the Julio Jones comps are out. Like he is truly just a special wide receiver.
I mean, he deserves all. He's pretty much has everything. For that size, he runs really clean routes. For that, he obviously can really move, gets downfield, hits
body control is the craziest.
Unbelievable hands and body control like that. Like you see some of those circus catches he makes rather routinely. It's insane what he does.
I feel like I could put up some big time numbers for this Ohio State offense at the quarterback spot. Like just like blindly throw it up to Marvin Harrison Jr. and let him go make a play. And we haven't even talked about the number 2 wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka. I mean, like you look at mock drafts, he's the wide receiver 2 in this class. You have a guy like Carnell Tate who is making big time strides. Don't even forget about Julian Fleming, who's a former top 10 recruit nationally. Xavier Johnson getting a lot of buzz. Brandon Inniss coming in the summer. The list is just so loaded that it does seem at this point hard for a quarterback to fail in this offense.
And that's the thing. Like there are monster shoes to fill for this Ohio State team at the quarterback position. I mean, you've now had 3 great ones with Haskins, Fields, and Stroud. But like again, what you do have is talent. Like these 2 guys, both top 50 national recruits. Obviously, I mean, you're not playing at Ohio State if you're not wildly talented. Now they still got to go execute and kind of uphold that standard, which again is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but like.
The standard right now is like a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. If you're not a top 10 pick at Ohio State at the quarterback position the last 5 years, like that's not the standard. But you look at across the country, like there's so many teams. We call it a question mark. There's so many teams that wish they could be in Ohio State's shoes with the quarterback situation. You have 2 5-stars battling it out for quarterback 1. I mean, you will go look at the Florida Gators. I don't even know if they feel confident in 1 quarterback in that room.
And that's the thing. Like, again, it is going to come down to execution, and we don't really know what it's going to be. But just given Ohio State's track record, given Ryan Day's track record, and given the talent and the fact that you have a legitimate competition, which I think always helps, I do think Ohio State's going to be fine. I know people are going to want to kind of bring it down like, oh, how can you replace CJ Stroud? Well, how can you replace Justin Fields, and how could you replace Haskins?
They've done
This
it.
is the program that does it. Again, they're still going to need to go out and execute, but I don't see how you couldn't have confidence in that room. And especially looking around again, I think Travion Henderson, I think this is a comeback, bounce back.
Right? It stole the words right out of my mouth. And it sounds as wild as it is, me being a Michigan fan. Travion Henderson might be the best running back. I mean, obviously I ride with Blake Corum too, but Travion Henderson, as a true freshman, put together one of the more special seasons we've seen from an 18-year-old kid. I mean, 34 catches for 300+ yards on the ground, average 6.8 yards per carry on the ground. Truly, it was Bijan Robinson and Travion Henderson heading into last year. And I think a lot of people like to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Buka. Travion Henderson is one of the best players on this offense and a quarterback's best friend. If it ain't Marvin Harrison Jr. just going up and mossing people, it's a really good run game. And I expect it to be a strong run game with guys like Travion Henderson and even Mayan Williams, who is also considered probably one of the better running backs in the country.
I mean, you just get a healthy year out of Travion and kind of take a step forward. Obviously, last year just didn't go the way I'm sure he wanted to go with the health, but the talent is there. And then, I mean, for what you maybe are lacking on the offensive tackle position, or not lacking, but just don't know what you have, you're going to have some hammers up front at both guard spots, two guys who arguably could have gone and played pro last year. Obviously, weren't old enough in Donovan Jackson's case, but both they're NFL guards. And now the question really is at Ohio State, can you find two tackles to play really good football? Because that's a position that's been on lock at that school for now.
This is a big year for Justin Fry. I don't think he's done a great job recruiting nationally that tackle position. You obviously lose a guy like Paris Johnson Jr. and DeJuan Jones. That is if you had one question mark. I was just thinking about this. I think you could fill out 2 top 10 offenses with the skill around. You have a legit 6 wide receivers who are great. We didn't even mention Cade Stover, who's one of the better tight ends in the country as well. The one question mark, and they tried to fix it with going in the transfer portal and getting Josh Simmons, which I think makes a lot of Ohio State fans feel better about that tackle spot. That's probably the one question mark you have in this offense is who's protecting the quarterback one here. And with the good pass rushers you'll see at Penn State and Michigan, that is probably a question that Ryan Day has heading into 2023 here.
And again, I don't think, I mean, you could sit up here and predict it now, but I don't think anyone knows exactly what they're going to get. Obviously, it didn't look good enough in the spring game. Probably a big
hard to evaluate.
Well, yeah, they were going against 2 hammers in Sawyer and JT, but I mean, you don't know now. Obviously, I do. That's for sure why Josh Simmons decided Ohio State. I mean, I'm sure he knows he's got at least a chance to compete. It's not going to be easy to take out Fryer and Tegra Shabola, who's really talented player in his own right. But there's going to be an opportunity there. Again, you just got to have faith in Ohio State to do what they've done, and that's develop players, get them ready to rock and roll. You just don't see Ohio State kind of miss on that and have real liabilities. They may not.
That is a position that they have seemed to You're right. Ohio State never has who's next question because they recruit at a high level. This is a kind of a question at this tackle spot. Who's next? I wonder if Luke Montgomery, the true freshman, it's really rare to find guys as true freshmen that get meaningful snaps. I wonder if he's in that contention for one of those tackle spots because it does seem like if there's one spot that is maybe lacking in some top tier talent, it is that tackle position. But let's get to the bigger story, I think, for the last couple of years for Ohio State, and that's the defense. Year 1 under Jim Knowles really wasn't as bad as I think. I think the national media likes to act like it was a disaster. You take a look at the stats. I mean, 3.5 yards per carry to opposing running backs, a 58% completion percentage to quarterbacks. That outside of a couple plays against Michigan, that defense was pretty damn good all year.
And again, that's pretty much the only thing people were beating Jim Knowles up for was that game. And in fairness, that can't happen. I'm sure Ryan Day's made that abundantly clear to everybody in that program that, yeah, you can play really good defense, but you can't break down like that against Michigan. And I do think it probably will help going in. Jim Knowles now a second year. Guys will know his system better. They'll be more comfortable in it. And no doubt that's going to make a big impact because what Jim Knowles did was night and day different than what they were doing the year ago.
That is probably the biggest thing I think people aren't saying enough of. And we saw it as Michigan fans. We've talked about it a little bit in this offseason. Jim Knowles brings a very complicated defense. And you have a lot of 5-star athletes playing but they're thinking. Like last year, I think you saw a lot of them kind of thinking more than playing football because it's a very difficult scheme to grasp. We saw with Michigan, year 2 under the system, it's a lot better. Like people know their responsibilities, they know the sub packages. So I'm optimistic. Like you look at this Ohio State defense, and we'll start on the defensive line here because it is truly loaded with talent. The question mark is not the players on the football field. It's more the X's and O's and can they execute this Jim Knowles defense. And I think another offseason of learning this playbook, I think is going to massively help the performance of this defense. Now, having said that, let's start talking about some players. JT, Jack Sawyer, Michael Hall Jr., 3 guys that I feel pretty good about potentially being first-round picks in the 2024 NFL Draft.
I mean, you legit now at Ohio State again. JT, I think, is a top 10 pick. I mean, when he was on last year, he was really, really good. You talk about, that Penn State game, I haven't seen a defensive end make that big of an impact on a football game against really good tackles, frankly, in Ohio State in a long time. And then you got Jack Sawyer. I think you could maybe argue he's playing a little bit out of position at times where he wasn't just turned loose on the edge, and that's where he should play. That's kind of his game. When he was doing that, he was a disruptor too. And then I think one thing that's a little underrated is what they just did yesterday or whatever it was, and getting time. Because one thing they kind of lacked is some beef in the middle. And I love Michael Hall. He's obviously a great player, but he's not that
he's a 300+
pound guy. He's exactly what you said. He's more of a guy who likes getting in the backfield, really elite pass rusher on the inside. But now they bring in a Tywone Malone to kind of fill that front out and be a little tougher. Because, again, we talk about who they're going to need to beat. It's Michigan and Penn State, and both those teams are deep at the running back spot, good up front, and are going to try to hammer it on them.
The addition of Tywone Malone pretty much seemed exclusively – because he's probably not the best pass rusher, like 1 sack in 2 years for him miss. That addition seemed to be exclusively, hey, we got to play Penn State and Michigan. They're going to try to hammer the ball. We got to go get a 300+ pound defensive tackle who can fill double teams. I want to shout out one more guy before we move to the linebackers, and that's Kenyatta Jackson. He looks like a Zach Harrison Jr., and Zach Harrison was a guy that we just were always kind of, he's got to figure out, got it. And he did to an extent, but I don't think he ever kind of like filled those like the next Joey Bosa, the next Chase Young shoes. Damn good football player, but Kenyatta Jackson looks the part. Like the length, the burst, the bend off the edge, truly special. I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of another big-time contributor up front. And when you talk about evaluating defenses, especially at the college football level, having a pass rush that can get home with only rushing 4 is really, really beneficial, especially when you might have some concerns in the secondary. I think Ohio State is certainly going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and again, that's something. When Ohio State was really on in defense, they had the Bosas, Chase Young, guys who were just pass rushers who really were unblockable. For me this year, it's going to be about JT. Can he reach that level where he is game in and game out, just not blockable with a single tackle? And I frankly think he can, because he showed the flashes at least last year.
And getting to like how good this team is on paper, like you get to the linebacker group, like this is also, I mean, you have 4 linebackers that I think would start on almost every Power 5 team across the country. Tommy Eichenberg, arguably the best linebacker. It would have been the best linebacker in the 2023 NFL Draft. Steel Chambers, damn solid. Cody Simon, very good. And then CJ Hicks, who me and you both noted in the spring game, seemingly a football player that's going to be really hard to keep off the field this year.
Yeah, and again, Steel Chambers played good football at Ohio State. Cody Simons played solid football. CJ Hicks, if he plays the way he's capable of playing, I think he's a first-round draft pick. So for those 2 guys, I mean, to keep him off, it's going to be tough. Eichenberg, he's the alpha dog. I don't see how he doesn't play every snap. Played Michigan with 2 broken thumbs, was still really, really good. Just makes plays all. He's a gamer. I mean, he's not coming off the field 100%.
He's a hard guy, even as a Michigan fan, not to like. Like
he's just that prototypical middle linebacker, a hammer, plays really good in space. Just a premier middle linebacker, kind of what you expect from Ohio State. Frankly, you look at their past, like they've had some dogs there. So I again, that's a position I think it was good last year. I think it can be great this year. If CJ Hicks balls, they're going to be so good.
And you look to the secondary. Like I also like this on paper, the secondary is very good. If Denzel Burke gets back to that true freshman form where he was arguably like one of the better cornerbacks in the country, you're seeing a lot of mocks have him as a first-round cornerback. Davison Igbinosun was I wanted him bad at Michigan. Great length. What he did as a true freshman in the SEC was special. And you had Jahad Carter too, who I think not enough people are talking about. You talk about what Jim Knowles wants to do on defense, having that extra nickel. Jahad Carter's a perfect fit. There's no doubt that went into his decision and coming to Columbus. Like, I am a perfect fit for what Jim Knowles wants to do. Can kind of do a little bit of everything on paper. And then you didn't even mention Josh Proctor and Lathan Ransom, who are also very solid safeties. Like, this is a really good group that I think just had some breakdowns last year. If they clean those up, like, that is a very solid second.
And again, they weren't really a problem per se last year. I mean, if they just win a couple of the big plays, they're really no issue. One guy I think you probably have to mention, and who I think is going to be another young guy who's just going to be hard to Sonny Styles. Like, we talk about what CJ Hicks is and how much potential he has. Like, Sonny Styles to be that big, that athletic, a real hammer at the safety spot. Again, I don't think that safety play was incredible last year. I think those two guys, just Latham and Proctor, like, are they going to be able to keep him out of the starting lineup? I am wondering. It's going to be tough because
you're so right. Like, they're young players, but there are two guys that, like, if they reach their ceiling, like, CJ Hicks probably the best linebacker on the team, and Sonny Styles probably the best safety on the team. If they are ready, mature enough to make it happen, because they are different athletically. I want to take us to the schedule now, right? 10.5 win total. Like, when I look at this Ohio State schedule, we're going to pull it up real quick. It's really hard to see them losing a game until they play Michigan in Ann Arbor. Like, it does seem like we're going to see an 11-0 Michigan versus an 11-0 Ohio State, and it's going to be another one of those games for the ages.
And that's what you like root for. Like, when those come down, 2016, the last 2 years,
that's what I live for.
Like, it's so fun when, obviously not 21, I guess Ohio State and Michigan lost games, but when they go in 11-0, it's just like the energy, the excitement. I mean, that's like the most fun thing in college football. That feels like a national title when you win it. And it's, again, you talk about it, I just don't see any of these Big Ten teams beating them. And the only out of conference test is Notre Dame, who.
Yeah, I'm the road at Notre Dame with Sam Hartman as quarterback. Like, there's two other, like, maybe we're just being a little disrespectful. On the road at Notre Dame with Sam Hartman as the quarterback, like, that's no slouch of a game. And then you play Penn State, who we're doing Penn State summer scout, and we already got our notes ready for tomorrow. Penn State's a very good program too. Those are two teams that are arguably top 10. I think Penn State's for sure top 10. Notre Dame kind of on that fringe. That's no disrespect to Notre Dame and Penn State. It's just a little bit more respect to the Ohio State program and how good this football team is heading.
If Drew Allar plays really incredible football this year, Ohio State might have like a legit threat that wouldn't be a wild upset in Penn State beating them. But again, like, that's not guaranteed. Penn State might be a year away from being like really, really good because their young guys are really coming on. They're recruiting at a really high level. And their team's going to be good this year. It certainly has some holes compared to like Ohio State and Michigan. And you've seen kind of how those games have gone in the past couple of years with those two teams. But again, I mean, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, they're certainly the class of the Big Ten right now. It's going to be two incredible games. Ohio State and Penn State.
I would be a little bit more hesitant about this Notre Dame game if it was the opener like it was last year. Like, you have a new quarterback. Maybe you have some question marks, but you let Kyle McCord get in, go 3 kind of cakewalk. I mean, Indiana. That's about as cakewalk as it gets. Youngstown State, Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky can low-key sling it around. That'll be a nice little like primer game for the secondary, but they're gonna win that game. Like, if you had Notre Dame week 1, I'd be a little bit more nervous about it. A veteran quarterback in Sam Hartman versus like an unproven quarterback in Ohio State, whoever that might be. But you give Kyle McCord or Devin Brown a couple games to get their feet wet, like C.J. Stroud needed to during his first year starting. It's really hard to see this Ohio State team losing many games. So I'm looking at a 10.5 win total for Ohio State. It's hard to see them losing 2 games this year. So that'll do it for the boys. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. If you're into the Ohio State recruiting trail, like, it's been busy. They've been active. So lock in for that as well. We try to do as many updates as we can. We appreciate the support you guys have shown. And we'll talk to y'all later.